welcome back to our Going Through the Decades, the 60s and 70s, our timeline series, taking you from 1960 to 1979, the horror films and the fashion. This week, we're on the year 1964, so welcome. Let's get started. If you're new here, my name's Ashley, and I'm a lover of all things 60s and 70s, the fashion, of course, the music, the film, the horror films, and everything in between, just not the values. So, what we do on our timeline series is we focus on the fashion of that year. So, this year is 1964. And then we take a look at the top horror films of that year. They are my top horror films. So, in the comments, you can tell me what you think your top horror films of 1964 are. And I would love to know. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the fashion of 1964. 1964 was the year. Remember in 1963, we were on the cusp of that chic, sophisticated fashion of Jackie Kennedy and Audrey Hepburn, and pushing through slightly was that youthquake, that modern style, really pushing the envelope with mini skirts. Well, this is where it pushed right through, and the mod movement took hold of the world. It really started in England, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about what changed in fashion this year. We really went for more shift dresses, A-line dresses, more of a geometric shape when it came to dresses, and the hemlines became shorter. The miniskirt was in full swing. Now, this look was heavily influenced by London, where A-line dresses, mini skirts were really all the rage, and it started to take the world over. And people were looking to London for fashion. Not just A-line dresses were making a big move onto the scene, but also to bold patterns, bright colors, and space age looking fashion. And we started to use new materials like plastic and PVC. Now, mod. You hear that word a lot, and I use it a lot because I absolutely adore mod fashion. It is probably my favorite, and I love the looks from this era. Now, what is mod? Well, mod stands for modernist. Mod stands for modernist, and it was really a rebellious style to kind of step away from the polished look of the 50s of people's parents and really make their own mark with fashion. And it wasn't just for women. Men started wearing fitted Italian suits with straight lines and slim fit trousers, where women started wearing mini skirts, A-line dresses, bold patterns, and colors. A key trend was space age. And what is space age? Well, I'm going to answer that question right now. It was a more futuristic look and really part of that youthquake that was happening. Using new materials like plastic and PVC to really change the game in fashion. Space Age featured more geometric shapes, bold colors and prints, and also sharp-lined mini dresses, as well as go-go boots. So not only were Space Age and mod really key trends, some other key trends were, of course, the mini skirt, which really started taking kind of notice in 1963, if you remember, with Mary Quant, the original creator of the mini skirt. So hemlines started to rise. Shift dresses, of course, were also all the rage with bold colors, prints, and colors. Go-go boots were still holding strong, knee-high usually, and they came in all different colors, and this was a really big part of the space age look. And also popping on the scene was the little girl look. It was influenced by childlike styles. Think those short mod dresses that usually had a collar or looked kind of little kiddish. And this was really big part of the early 60s. Think baby doll dresses and bows in your hair, which those are back in style now, and I love that. Now, hair was still very similar. The bouffant was still really big in this year, but also too, the pixie really started to take hold of the world. This was a big, new, bold style that was very youthful with a short, fun, geometric cut, which really was different for this time. Makeup, the focus was still on the eyes, so think lashes, a lot of lashes, bold eyeliner, and white on the lids to really draw attention and open up the eyes. Now, I mentioned London was the scene for fashion, and everyone looked to London for fashion. And there was a very big store that opened in 1964 called the Biba Boutique. It was affordable fashion for the youth and the beginning of kind of like fast fashion in a way, where youth could go there to get affordable clothes that were in style and on trend. All in all, the fashion of 1964 was the big shift where the youth quake started to take over, where things started to change and it wasn't your mama's fashion anymore. Now, style icons of this year were still holding strong because we still had that chic, sophisticated look with Jackie Kennedy and Audrey Hepburn. Also, too, Mary Quant was still on that fashion trend radar because, again, she invented the miniskirt and she had an amazing store in London named Bazaar that had all of the hottest dresses and on trend during this time. Jean Shrimpton is still on this list this year, of course, because she's the first supermodel, also known as the Shrimp. The Beatles, again, were on this list because they really changed fashion for men. And the biggest thing that was really popular during this time was more fitted suits for men and also what they call Beatle boots, which I'll insert a picture here. Two people on the style icon list of 1964 are Francesca Hardy, and if I say that name wrong, I'm sorry. She was a French singer, but also really known for her boho chic style. Now that we talked about the amazing fashion and the big push for a change in fashion with all of this youthful new looks, let's talk about the horror movies of 1964. Now, horror in 1964 was again making a little bit of a shift. It was bridging gothic horror with gore and psychological thrillers, and gore was a big part of 1964 horror. So let's take a look at my top horror films of 1964. Starting strong with The Mask of the Red Death. This was a gothic Vincent Price film that really took a step into more of the psychological thriller. Now this movie is based on the Edgar Allan Poe short story. It's about Prince Prospero's attempt to evade a deadly plague. The story explores the theme of death's invitality and trying to outrun it. Prospero and his companions seclude themselves in a lavish abbey stocked with everything they need to avoid the Red Death, a bloody disease that kills quick. So this one really does have a dark tone and it is more philosophical in a way. It's more of like a thinker and it is kind of like, it's scary in the way where it makes you think about death, which can be scary. So it is more of like a psychological type thing than more of the old horror movies that we knew in the past. So this was a really big step forward. And Vincent Price is one of the horror icons, I think, of all time. So having his name on this film, that's what first drew me to watch this film. And I think it's a really good one. It definitely makes you think, and it is very dark, you know, and if you are into more darker horror films, you will absolutely love this 1964 classic. Next up is The Gorgon, a classic Hammer horror film. And again, Hammer's really big in the 60s and 70s, and I also want to do like a whole series on Hammer films, but that's besides the point. This is a film with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, who are icons of Hammer horror. If you know Hammer horror, their names kind of go together. Now, this film is about a mysterious monster is turning people into stone in a German village, and it's based in 1910. When his girlfriend is killed, Bruno becomes the prime suspect. His ensuing suicide seems to confirm the guilt, but Professor Carl Mastier, who is Christopher Lee, isn't so sure. He thinks one of the villagers is possessed by the spirit of Megaria, sister to Medusa. Among possible culprits are Dr. Nemiroff, who is played by Peter Cushing, the nurse Carla Barbershelley, and a mental patient. So this film is about basically the old Greek myth. If you know Medusa, she has snakes in her hair, and if you look at those snakes, they turn you to stone. So this really takes a new spin on horror, going back to kind of horror stories of Greek mythology and putting it into play in a 60s spin. And they don't necessarily use Medusa, but they use her sister and the spirit of her sister to make it into more of a present day film, which I thought was kind of neat. I've always been interested in Greek mythology, so I thought that was cool. And I do kind of dig Medusa. I think it's just cool that she had like snakes in her hair. I think it's rad and that she could turn people to stone. But that's just me. But I really do think this is a really cool film. The imagery from it was beautiful. If you know Hammer Films, just the vibrancy of the color and the way that they shoot things in a gothic way is just amazing. So if you like Hammer Films, you'll absolutely love this 1964 film. Lastly on this list is 2000 Maniacs. Probably one of the first gore films really that was popular in the 60s. And this was pretty gory for the 60s, let me tell you. So it was more of a low budget film. So think Texas Chainsaw Massacre type of vibe. And it had high gore. There was a lot of blood in this film. And that was very different from what people saw in the past with horror films. So this was a big step forward in the world of horror. So what this is about is the southern hamlet of Pleasant Valley was the scene of a massacre during the Civil War. Now, once every 100 years, the ghosts of the dead return and wreak havoc. Three Yankee couples are lured into town and invited to the centennial of the tragedy, which turns into a murderous parody of rural celebration. As the guests are dismembered, barbecued, and stoned, and otherwise inevitably dispatched. The last living pair, Tom and Terry, attempt to escape the bloodshed. So very kind of like, if you think about it, Texas Chainsaw Massacre-esque, I think. You have the people trying to escape at the end. Yeah, it has that vibe. So maybe that was, something that inspired the likes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But it really was the first gore film of its time and something that audiences hadn't seen in the past. So it really was something that was something that was seen as a little grotesque, and I think people were really taken aback by this film, but it was a huge step forward in the horror genre itself. Overall, the horror films of 1964 were pushing the envelope, really shifting the way people think of horror, which I absolutely love, and it only gets better from here on forward. So next up, we have 1965, the fashion and the top horror films, and I'm so excited to bring you that. Make sure you subscribe so you can know when a new video drops, but also to share and like. It helps me, and I just appreciate you guys watching my channel. And make sure you comment below. Let me know what your top horror films are and what you loved about the fashion of 1964, because I know I absolutely loved that mod style. Until next time, I'll see you.